media.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to Behind the Bastards. I'm Robert Evans, and we have some sad news for the audience up at the top of the episode. Yesterday morning at about 0800 hours, Sophie Lichterman's plane left Tokyo bound for Manila. It was shot down over the Sea of Japan. It spun in. There were no survivors. She'll be back next week, but with me this week is our beloved returning guest, Jason Pargin. Jason, do you think that MASH joke is going to work with our audience? How many of our
what year did that episode come out?
Like years before I was born?
It's so dangerous because if there's any kind of an air disaster the day this episode's supposed to go up, then we've got to go in and, well, no, that just makes it funnier, I guess.
That makes it fun. The only time I've removed a joke for something like that was we made some jokes at the start of the COVID pandemic when I assumed it was going to be like a SARS situation. And we cut those bad boys out before air because that did not age well with the entire country locked down. Jason Pargin, you are my former boss over at cracked.com. Which was briefly defunct, but is now funked, but neither of us work there anymore. You are the author of a number of wonderful books. Do you want to talk about the book that you've got that's going to be out in about 2 weeks at the time which people hear these episodes?
Yes, the book is a standalone novel called I'm Starting to Worry About This Black Box of Doom. It is not a part of any series. It doesn't require any prior knowledge of me or this podcast or anything else. Anyone can enjoy it as long as you enjoy books. Robert gave a blurb on it. It was wonderful. Very kind. He said, strangely, that the book saved his marriage. Which surprised everyone. I didn't know he was married. It's not that kind of book.
I was not. That's the magic of your writing, Jason.
But so far the reviews are getting equally. The positive ones are half saying it's fun. It's a fun little roller coaster ride. You can read on the beach. It's something you can read on the toilet. Like if you don't want to get fecal particles on your phone.
Sure.
This is something you can have on the toilet instead. And the other half of the reviews are like, I just put it down and stared at the wall for a while. And then I called my mom. I decided I had to totally change my life. I deleted all the apps off my phone. So I guess it depends on how you want to approach it. If you just want a breezy read, it's there for you. But apparently some people, they have decided to make permanent life changes after reading it.
I mean, that's every author's goal, is for the readers to make ill-considered, rash decisions that alter the entire course of their existence after finishing your book. Yeah, I've been reading your books. I mean, I literally started more than 20 years ago when I was an adolescent in high school, long before the Cracked days when you were still publishing stuff on the internet. And it's been gratifying to see that you are one of, I don't know, like a dozen people in the country who can make a living writing novels. I'm very happy that continues to work. And it works.
See, we've reached a point where I know for a fact their narrative is going to be geriatric TikTok star tries to write a book, tries to cash in on his TikTok fame. It's like, no. I was writing books before social media existed, before you could upload video to the internet. Yeah. I was writing books. I'm a washed up author trying to reclaim my success with TikTok. It's not the other way around.
See, I even had this joke planned when I came in. I was going to do like this series of bits about how you were actually Gen Z because of your TikTok stardom. But you've ruined that. Although, Jason, I did want to say, to start this off, Sophie's not here. This episode is just you and I. And you, as a Gen Z expert on the TikToks, know that all the kids these days are using the term raw dog for situations like this, which is deeply upsetting to our ears as old men. But the kids love using it for everything from sitting on a plane without a book to not taking psychiatric medication that's prescribed to you from your doctor. So are you ready to Gen Z terminology this podcast episode that you suggested?
Yes, let's raw dog goon this. Let's goon this episode. What are some other terms
This won't be Ohio. I hear the kids are using Ohio as a term for mid or unimpressive.
Right.
Yeah, they're all right sometimes. Jason, this is a story that you had suggested. And the bastard of this story is kind of the entire C-suite at eBay. It's a lot worse than I think listeners are going to be ready for. But to give some context, I want to actually start by peeling back outside of eBay, because as a heads up, the story we're telling is the tale of how eBay's internal security agency decided that a pair of elderly bloggers were mortal enemies of the corporation and deployed insane degrees of force and violence to attempt to stop them from publishing blogs. But I wanted to peel back a bit and start by talking about like where the industry of like corporate intelligence is, like private intelligence services that a company can hire to deal with threats to their profitability. Because I think it's one of the undertold stories of the 21st century, and it's partly undertold because people who tell it tend to get sued.
It's really interesting because I read the story and read the results of it and like the legal process and all that. And I could not make heads or tails of how any of this could have happened. And when I tried to read background on it, could not make heads or tails of how any of this could have happened. Because, you know, if you disappoint some guy who owns a mom and pop shop and he's kind of a douchebag or whatever, you can see that guy like mailing you a dead rat or something. Mm-hmm. The idea of upsetting eBay and they start mailing you dead animals in the mail. And that's not the weirdest part of this story. It gets so off the rails. This is the part I don't have, is how there are people in the company who have this mindset. Because this story goes to places that you don't see fictional stories go. No. There's no plot line on Succession like this. And it would have come off as corny if there was.
Yeah, it would be kind of unbelievable. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, and we're done with the cold open.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Looking for your next go-to smoke shop? Stop scrolling. I've got you. Headshop.com is the #1 online smoke shop, already trusted by over 100,000 happy smokers, just like you. They've got it all. Dab rigs, vaporizers, glass bongs, smoking pipes, even THCA flower, all in one place. Need a new daily driver? Grab a smooth glass bong or a classic smoking pipe. More of a concentrate fan? Their dab rigs, e-rigs, and wax accessories are designed for smoother, harder hitting sessions. And yes, they've even got legal THC flower. Best part? Every order ships fast and discreet, which is why thousands of smokers keep coming back. So don't waste time hopping between shops. Shop the best in dab rigs, vaporizers, glass bongs, smoking pipes, and THCA flower right now at Headshop.com, the #1 online smoke shop. Headshop.com has what you need. Check it out today. Oh, and because you're listening right now, you get 10% off your next order when you use the coupon code HSHOP at checkout. Go to Headshop.com now and smoke smarter.
When segregation was a law, one mysterious black club owner, Charlie Fitzgerald, had his own rules.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
It was like stepping on another world.
Was he a businessman, a criminal, a hero?
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
Charlie's Place, from Atlas Obscura and Visit Myrtle Beach. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, it's me, Anna Sinfield, the host of The Girlfriends. I'm back with more one-off interviews with some truly kick-ass women on The Girlfriends Spotlight.
I'm going to climb this.
Is badness hereditary?
Let's see how we can stop killing.
I'm not too intimidated by her.
What are you talking about? Listen to The Girlfriend Spotlight on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Jason, for whatever reason, the company now has us do that little cold open thing. The listener will have heard an ad in between where I just said the cold open's done and then Jason. But now we're warmed up. We're hot. Are you ready to go? Are you excited? Yes. That our corporate overlords now make us do a cold open? That has improved the quality of the show, I'm sure. So, on February 11th, 2011, the New York Times published a story about hackers who had forced their way into the computer systems of a security company called HB Gary. At this point, the public conception mostly put spying as the domain of nation-state actors, right? Like if you had asked the average person, are there like spy agencies in the employ of like random finance companies, they probably would have said, well, like not real ones, you've probably got like some sort of physical security for the buildings and stuff, but nothing like the FBI or whatever. But that view was already outdated in 2011. The HB Gary hack revealed a different world of espionage, paid for by the highest bidder, and most importantly, petty to an almost unfathomable degree. Rather than the kind of stuff that like cyberpunk stories had primed us to expect from our mega corporations, like high-profile assassinations and burglaries to steal priceless inventions, most of the stolen documents from HB Gary revealed them like pitching their corporate clients ways to attack the enemies of like Bank of America and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in what we would consider incredibly petty ways that kind of more than anything resemble the way people fight online, rather than like, again, the sort of sinister stuff that like if you're playing like a cyberpunk pen and paper game, your team's going to be doing.
Because I had heard of corporate espionage, which I always thought was just somebody sneaking into another company to try to get a look at their design on a thing. And I just assumed that was a thing forever. But what you're describing and what I know is coming in this story, it's almost like a type of psychological guerrilla warfare, or just trolling people. I don't get it.
Well, and it's important to understand, I think part of what kind of brings some context to this is if you actually look at what like the FBI was doing at the height of the civil rights movement, most of their actual physical work was nothing that like would make a particularly impressive movie. It was literally, we have hired different sort of like a mix of like thugs and just like people that we think we can get to like work for us for a few bucks to like trail every black person on the campus of this college, right? Like literally like that's a big part of like when those activists broke into that FBI office and leaked all those files to the Washington Post. This was a year or two before Watergate. That was a big part of what was revealed, is that there were like colleges where the FBI was just surveilling like every black student at the college, and it wasn't even with FBI agents a lot of the time. They had just hired goons to follow these kids around in case they might do something. So to an extent, I guess part of what you have to understand if you study the history of espionage, 1% of it is really cool stuff where they're making like polonium darts to shoot out of umbrellas and assassinating governmental leaders. And 99% of it is just we hired a dumb guy to follow them around, and they're going to know the dumb guy's following them because he's a big, like he's not very good at it, but we don't really like what if they notice, what's the harm to us? We want them scared, right? The whole point is to just intimidate people. So, and that's largely, I think that is the logic that a lot of these corporate security firms function on. It doesn't matter as much, are our plans super well thought out? What matters is that we kind of brute force people into being scared to fuck with us, right? And that's the kind of like plots that HB Gary was shopping around to, and they never, again, none of this stuff is ever as direct as you want it to be. So HB Gary, which is the security company, would send the plans they had to this law firm called Hunton and Williams, which represented all of these big, like Bank of America, represented the Chamber of Commerce, which itself represents a bunch of different financial institutions in the company or in the country. In one document, HB Gary's chief executive, Aaron Barr, offered to publicize biographic details about a union organizer that had challenged the Chamber of Commerce when it opposed the Obama admin's healthcare reform package. And you hear that and it's like, oh, did he like have a drunk driving arrest? Did he kill someone with his car? No, I want to read you a direct quote from Barr on the salacious details he wanted to reveal about this union organizer. They go to a Jewish church in D.C. They have 2 kids, a son and a daughter. And first off,
what year was this? I'm sorry.
2011. First off, right. I think it's a synagogue. I don't think you call it a Jewish church. I mean, I guess that's not like technically wrong, but like it'd be weird if you called it like a Muslim church. Like we have words for those, but I don't know. It's weirder that he thought that was like the damning detail that like, yeah, he goes to synagogue and he has 2 kids. You blew this all wide open, H.B. Gary. A week later, Barr offered to create in-depth target dossiers, and keep that in mind, because we're going to run into that tactic again when we go back to eBay, with the goal of, quote, mitigating the effect of adversarial groups like U.S. Chamber Watch, which was a citizens group that like criticized and protested the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. One proposition was to publish the petty criminal record of a member in the group. In another instance, H.B. Gary offered to work with Peter Thiel's Palantir, which is a private spy company, to attack WikiLeaks before it could release a tranche of emails from inside Bank of America related to the financial crash. And this is a little bit closer to like the serious cyberpunk stories, like WikiLeaks. They're doing some serious business in 2011. This at least sounds like, a little more exciting, but their specific plan to attack WikiLeaks was to submit a bunch of fake documents, and then when WikiLeaks reported on them, expose them as forgeries specifically to damage Glenn Greenwald's career, which if you'd just given him a little longer, Glenn was going to do that on his own.
I guess I'm already confused because we have worked in corporate environments where every hour, every minute, every penny is being watched. And the question is, well, how does this contribute to the bottom line? So the idea that you've got like what really to me sounds like a dirty tricks department.
Yeah.
And they're reporting to somebody. They're on the payroll with a job title. What they're doing is being documented somewhere. It feels like the type of thing that a company in 1970 would do. Back when the way you break a union is you go just burn the guy's house down or whatever to try to intimidate him. But you would not think in 2011 or whatever that you still have a dirty tricks department. And I know that I sound naive. I guess I just assumed we had moved into a world where you just sue people when you want to silence them. You would not go digging up, like, hey, there's rumors that these people are Jews. What's going on with that?
I wonder how much of it is these CEOs and stuff are probably all older. They're probably all like mostly baby boomers. In 2011, you would imagine the guys running big banks are probably, most of them probably aren't Gen X, maybe a few. And I wonder, even if they were Gen X, they were probably raised on stories of Watergate. I wonder how much of this is just like reading about the dirty tricks that the Nixon White House did and assuming like, well, that's probably what we should do with our
went great for him.
Yeah, went well for Nixon. That's why he had so many terms as president. Now, the fact that this hack of H.B. Gary happened in the first place was because Barr, who was like the dude actually submitting these plans to that legal firm, had made public threats to the leaders of Anonymous, the leaderless hacking collective, a couple of weeks earlier. And he had even stated that he had information about the names of several of their, quote, leaders that he was about to reveal, which I think was a lie. And Anonymous kind of called his bluff, which is when all of these emails got leaked. And for good measure, they took control of Barr's Twitter account just to fuck with him. Now, this led to Barr stepping down as CEO and basically begging Anonymous to leave him alone for the sake of his children. So now one of the things that you saw as soon as like Barr got embarrassed is Palantir and all of these other companies that he had been talking about working with sought to distance themselves from H.B. Gary. Hey, this was just some lone asshole making like proposals to his court. Like, we never agreed to do any of these jobs with them. We at Palantir would never do anything this unethical, right? Like, you can trust us. This was just one lone asshole. Fast forward about 6 years to 2017, when Harvey Weinstein's life explodes and stories start to come out that he had used a different spy-for-hire company, Black Cube, in order to harass a lot of the women that he had abused and to try to stop the story that the New York Times ultimately published from coming out about him. Now, Black Cube, the firm that he used, was based in Israel and staffed with a bunch of former Mossad guys. And if H.B. Gary is kind of like Bush League, Black Cube's like the New York Yankees, right? This is a high dollar, high power corporate spy firm with absolutely no ethical or moral constraints and a terrifying degree of power. That said, like H.B. Gary, they wielded this with like an almost, there's always this degree of like incompetence that I think is just born from and I think all the HB Gary guys, a lot of them probably came out of the government too. If you work in government intel agencies all your life, you have the shield of working for the government, and then you move into the private sector and everything is a lot harder, and you no longer have that kind of protection. And so you notice just like dumb shit, right? That's kind of the most interesting thing to me when studying like Black Cube and this constellation of other Israeli companies that all have like former government agents working for them. Specifically, the way that Black Cube went after some of Weinstein's accusers was they had a bunch of investigators to make false identities to try to befriend some of the women online who were accusing Weinstein, with the goal of basically disgracing them. And it was just kind of a wildly unsuccessful plan that showed, I think, a degree of like just assuming everyone was dumb that was involved in this. Like none of these people would be intelligent enough to know that Weinstein might have people going after them. None of them would have any precautions in place. None of them would be talking to people like Ronan Farrow or talking to like anyone who might be able to advise them on like the risks that they faced going after Weinstein. It's just this like, it's very interesting to me, the kind of arrogance that you see with these, which is going to be a big part of the eBay story too.
Okay, I'm going to be frank here. Every single story I hear about espionage at any level is always a dumb slapstick affair full of mistakes and people stumbling into the wrong thing. And whenever they succeed, it's almost on accident or because the people they were after were extremely stupid and made a bunch of really obvious mistakes. Listeners who listen to all your episodes know we did a series on MK Ultra. Yeah, which had a reputation in the conspiracy world as this otherworldly alien, high-tech mind control Manchurian candidate, space age stuff. And in reality was just a lot of people getting very high on government funds. And one guy who had like a little jerk off room where he watched agents like have sex with prostitutes. And it was just a bunch of very dumb people who had watched a lot of spy movies and themselves were working off of very silly, I don't know, almost childlike ideas of what that kind of thing, of how it worked and what mind control could do. But ultimately, they were just kind of drawing a government paycheck to do a bunch of idiocy. And I rarely hear anything that sounds like James Bond.
You get a couple of those, right? Like, obviously, that has happened in the past, right? You have some, especially like you can go into World War II, you can find some examples of really like effective and intelligent espionage. But I think some of it is that the fact that spy movies are such a big part of the culture it's kind of like the issue that people say AI language models are going to have, where they're going to get trained on more and more stuff that's AI generated, and that's going to cause additional sort of hallucinations. I think ever since the end of like the start of the Cold War, every generation of spies has been poisoned by spy movies, and it's caused caused a degree of inevitable degeneration, right? That's a big part of the eBay story. And there's this journalist, Sebastian Junger, I admire a lot. And he used to work with a photojournalist who died in Libya during the early days of that civil war. But his friend, the story he was in Libya to cover was he was specifically looking to get like photos and interviews with rebels who were, in the way that they were dressing and posing, consciously aping Hollywood action movies, because these were all kids who had grown up on bootleg American movies. And when they realized I'm about to be fighting in a war, they all started like dressing and acting like different characters from their favorite movies. And I think his instinct was good. That there is something like really important in that. And I don't think most people are not surprised to hear that like young men who become soldiers are influenced by action movies, right? And particularly a lot of like how they act and even their expectations of what war will be like. We just don't extend it enough to be like, no, that's true of all the guys in the CIA and the FBI too, right? They've all been raised on this shit and they're all deranged by it. So yeah, I did want to talk a little bit more about like what some of these like hack for hire companies today are like, because, and this is right before we get into the eBay story, but this is kind of important. Black Cube is part of a constellation of companies, and Israel is one of the places where a lot of these companies exist. We have an industry in the United States. There's a sizable industry that's kind of like the B tier of these hack for hire companies in India as well. And these are, it doesn't take, they usually are not super expensive, but the amount of damage that they can do to like our collective information ecology is pretty significant. For example, a peer company to Black Cube, Cobweb Technologies, which raised about $10 million in 2019 to build a search engine for intelligence information. Basically, all they were doing, building this search engine, was spearfishing huge numbers of random people to steal their personal data and then put it into a searchable database that they could sell access to. So, you know, effectively like stealing people's personal info in order to brag that like, hey, we have something that equivocates to like a police database that you can pay for access to because we've compromised all of these different people's accounts. Cobweb's plan was to take the kind of work that companies like HB Gary and Black Cube had been doing for years and get more proactive with it, right? Instead of waiting for a company to be like, I want you to target these specific people, we just get as many people as possible, trick random people into giving up their data at scale. And yeah, that's, there's actually an interesting report published by Meta, previously Facebook, recently that kind of goes into more detail on this. You can find the link in our show notes. But that report noted that like basically they've Cobweb activated like fake accounts on Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Twitter in order to like grab just en masse information on activists, politicians, government officials, like everyone they could get to fall for their shit.
But to what end? What was the final goal of that project?
To have a big database that they can sell access to, and you can search for
who would they sell it to?
Anyone who is looking for information on, like, they can say, like, you know, if you're an oil and gas company, right, and you're worried about protests in the UK by anti-oil and gas protesters, like some of those people who have quote unquote defaced, I don't think they've done any permanent damage to any paintings actually, but like, you know, those folks, right? You can pay for access to this database, and we have spearfished and scraped a bunch of people who have sympathies to that group, and you can see where they are, and you can, you know, set up your own surveillance potential. You can like try to infiltrate, but you'll get all this information on their real world and their digital networks. There's a lot that's come out recently about how there's this kind of unique cell phone identifying number that's supposed to be anonymous, but if you also know kind of where people live, you can like figure out which cell phone goes to which person. And using information that is available through a lot of these different like data broker companies, you can track random people's cell phones in the United States if you're a corporate actor, in order to like stalk people who you consider to be a threat. This is the thing that's happening right now. It's very easy. It's why everyone should use a burner cell phone and light their old phone on fire every 60 days. We're always saying this, Jason. You communicate entirely through Telegram, which not the app Telegram, but through an old-fashioned telegram. We actually have an actor portraying your voice right now and face. No one's seen you in years.
Was watching an 80s slasher movie as it took place in 1989, and a high school kid got invited to a party via Telegram.
Oh my God.
Was that? And I was 1989. I was 14. Were we still sending telegrams back then? Am I that old?
That seems a little archaic, but anyway, this has been a long lead up to the eBay story, but I wanted to kind of set the stage for you. And now we're going to pull to an ad break, and then we will come back with the story that you actually asked me to tell you today.
Looking for your next go-to smoke shop? Stop scrolling. I've got you. Headshop.com is the #1 online smoke shop, already trusted by over 100,000 happy smokers, just like you. They've got it all. Dab rigs, vaporizers, glass bongs, smoking pipes, even THCA flower, all in one place. Need a new daily driver? Grab a smooth glass bong or a classic smoking pipe. More of a concentrate fan? Their dab rigs, e-rigs, and wax accessories are designed for smoother, harder hitting sessions. And yes, they've even got legal THC flower. Best part? Every order ships fast and discreet, which is why thousands of smokers keep coming back. So don't waste time hopping between shops. Shop the best in dab rigs, vaporizers, glass bongs, smoking pipes, and THCA flower right now at Headshop.com, the #1 online smoke shop. Headshop.com has what you need. Check it out today. Oh, and because you're listening right now, you get 10% off your next order when you use the coupon code HSHOP at checkout. Go to headshop.com now and smoke smarter.
Almost 30 years together, 4 kids, and some of reality TV's most unforgettable moments, we know a thing or two about living life out loud. We're taking you behind the scenes in our new podcast, Between Us, with me, Heather Dubrow.
And me, Terry Dubrow. Between Us isn't about perfect lighting or curated Instagram grids.
It's the unfiltered, behind-closed-doors conversations you wish you could eavesdrop on. Equal parts smart, funny, and a little bit scandalous.
Every week, Heather will bring you an unapologetic take on the headlines, the trends, and the cultural moments everyone's texting about.
And Terry will deliver insider beauty, health, and wellness insights you won't find on TikTok.
Together, we'll tell the stories, spill the secrets, and share the hacks that keep life, marriage, and everything in between feeling fresh and fun.
We may live in a gated community, but there's zero gatekeeping here.
And plenty of did they just say that moments?
Listen to Between Us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's place, black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they was dressed up in their uniform.
The KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place, a story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back. So, this all brings me to the story of the Steiners. They are an now elderly couple who, back during the early days of the dot-com boom, when they were a mature adult couple, got really interested in the then burgeoning field of online sales. We are talking about the mid to late 1990s. David Steiner was a video producer who had a childhood fascination with yard sales, which is a strange fixation for a little kid or for an adult, for someone of any age. But, you know, it takes all kinds of people to make a world. And this fascination, he was kind of one of these, you know, after like all these Pawn Stars shows got big, there's a much wider community of people who are kind of obsessed with folks like selling old products or antiques and, you know, trying to find like hidden gems that are worth a bunch of money. Steiner's kind of one of the very first generations of people who is like obsessed with this stuff. And his particular interests, he loves like ancient marketing promotional products. He likes antique tools. And he starts following, you know, prior to eBay, there are a couple of different early auction websites on the old internet that he gets into and he's interested in. And his wife, Ina, I think she's both like kind of maybe shares his interest to a degree. And she's also a writer with an interest in kind of doing some journalism. So in 1999, this is 4 years after eBay's launch, they start to realize like this company in particular is the one that's going to actually dominate online auctions, right? There had been a couple of competitors. It's clear by 99 that eBay is going to be the big one. And the Steiners are just kind of nerds about this stuff. So they decide to turn their obsession with this new and exciting thing into a website, which is the thing people used to do back before social media. And reading about this stuff always gives me this like weird kind of nostalgia that makes me feel like an old man.
In fact, I will step in and because I know that the description of these people that prowl like garage sales, it makes them sound like creepy weirdos. The early days of eBay were fascinating.
Yeah.
Because suddenly the concept of everybody's junk from all over the world is for sale and stuff that it's like, oh my gosh, this action figure that I thought only I owned and that I lost when I was 8 years old. Here's this guy 2,000 miles away from me who's got one. And I thought I had imagined this thing. Oh my gosh, here it is. Like the idea that all this stuff was for sale. And then it immediately created this ecosystem of people who were learning all the techniques of how to like stealthily outbid somebody and all of this stuff. And people forget or if you weren't around back then, eBay was the first huge monster.com business.
And the first one that made it clear that like there's not just real money, but like ways for regular people to make real money if they can figure out how to game an algorithm.
And also that stock, when they went public, that was just like crypto style, people becoming millionaires overnight. eBay was huge. So it was a fascinating scene back then, because I bought and sold some stuff back in the 90s era eBay. And it was just, you find yourself not just in a place where you buy things, you find yourself in an ecosystem and in a cultural scene. I absolutely, in terms of like subjects to blog about, I totally get it.
This is also a very smart thing to do if you're in journalism or in more broadly just kind of the industry. You and I both spent much of our working careers in just like writing shit for the internet. You find a thing that has just exploded and that you know is going to be massive, and you make yourself the person that people go to read about that thing, right? That's what the Steiners do. They corner this, and their independent publication starts out being named Auction Bytes, BYTES. And, you know, it's geared towards a fairly niche chunk of the internet, people making their living auctioning items on eBay. And also, you know, increasingly as eBay becomes more and more of a big business, as it becomes clear like how much money is in this, also the kind of folks who are interested in investing in eBay and companies like it. Now, because Auction Bytes is kind of the first website that's news for this early community of sellers, and it expands beyond eBay, because soon there's Amazon, and like, you know, independent sellers are selling stuff on Amazon, and there's Etsy, and they cover all of that, right? Like they changed their name to e-commerce bytes, which is the name that their website still exists under, and they become like the go-to gumshoe reporters for people who are small and medium-sized merchants selling products on these services, as well as like people in finance who are looking to do investing in the companies that actually like are kind of the underpinning of this system. Now, if you've ever worked in an industry like e-commerce, you should know that daily life is a ceaseless war between the companies that provide a platform for online sales, who want to keep as much of the money transferred through their service as possible while spending as little as possible, and the merchants who actually provide products. As a result, e-commerce Bytes' most widely read articles tended to focus on fuck-ups by companies like eBay, right? E-commerce Bytes really winds up kind of more on the sides of the merchants, and that leads to them having kind of an oppositional and confrontational attitude towards the corporations, right? Because largely, you know, that's how the people reading them look at the situation. You can get an example of this by looking at the site Today. One August 26th article by Ina promises, quote, a peek inside eBay payment holds. This article is based on an interview with a reader who'd sold a high-priced item and had the money sent to him placed on a 30-day hold, despite the fact that the buyer had confirmed receipt of the product and satisfaction with the purchase. In an interview I found on CBS News' 60 Minutes, Ina Steiner describes the job she and her husband did as acting as a conduit from small businesses and independent sellers to the larger corporate monoliths who ran these websites. And, you know, that's not super interesting to most of us, right? This is not like generally when you think of hard-hitting journalism, you don't think about like people representing eBay sellers, you know? I do think that's a valuable social role, but it is not something that should have ever led to an exciting case of a deranged spy agency trying to destroy people's lives.
No, but in that early era of the blogging years, there was a whole dynamic, because you saw the same thing in the film and Hollywood business with sites like Ain't It Cool News, where once they got a huge readership and once they started to be seen as something as an authority, they started to get tips and they started to break stories. And keep in mind, there's a parallel here, because keep in mind, if you were a Hollywood studio, once upon a time, you had actual news outlets you were dealing with. You had reporters you were friendly with. You had a whole mechanism for managing stories, scandals, if something you wanted covered up. So suddenly when the internet comes along and these bloggers come along and they just get a blind item via email, they'll just break the story. Like they don't care. They don't have access. They don't care.
They have no access, and they don't have any kind of ongoing relationships that they want to keep. We don't need to keep Paramount happy, right? Like, fuck them, you know?
Yeah. So this is similar here, because I think in the corporate world, across the corporate world, there is real anxiety about this because their ability to manipulate and control the flow of information, to keep a lid on stories, to stay out in front of stories. Because reporters, they will contact you and say, hey, we're working on the story about these accusations against your CEO or whatever. Do you want to comment? Well, if it's just leaks out to the internet, that person's just going to post it. So I'm not saying they necessarily got, that deep with their stories, but I can see where a company, if you were from a world where you had, like, you could keep the press on a leash, and then suddenly there's these citizen journalists out there that was the boogeyman in the corporate world.
You must be losing your mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I should also note, I said this is a niche audience. The Steiners to this day, at least according to the reporting I've read, have a regular audience of about 600,000 people, which for a website operated by two people, number one, that's a fairly sustainable business, but that's like a good readership for an independent news site. That is actually a very impressive. It testifies to the degree of work and trust that their audience has in them, that they have kept that audience up to the modern day, right? When so many news organs are in the process of collapsing or have collapsed. Much of Ina's reporting focused on issues that dealt directly with sellers but would be of interest to investors. For example, stories about eBay holding on to money from transactions for 30 days without any real reason seem like petty bullshit, and it is, but it's something that at scale could mean millions in extra profits, which all gets funneled upwards to the handful of people who run the company and own stock in it. Enter Devin Wenig, the CEO of eBay during the period of time that we are talking about in this story, which was up until 2019, 2015 to 2019. So Wenig had been born in Brooklyn in 1966. He was the son of Jeffrey Wenig, a toxicologist and chief executive of Nasdaq Pharmaceutical. When Jeffrey died suddenly, Devin, age 23, took over as CEO of the company for a year, raised $5 million in VC funding, and then joined a law firm, left the job after a year, and Nasdaq seems to have kind of continued a slow decline afterwards. I bring that up because that basic pattern where he hops in, raises a bunch of VC funding, sets up a merger, is going to kind of become the norm for his business career. In 1993, Wenig joins Reuters as the COO, and over the course of his time there, he becomes the number 2 man at the company, and he helps to manage the merger with the Thomson Corporation into Thomson Reuters. Now, this was a big deal at the time. There was a lot of antitrust scrutiny on it because Thomson Reuters, when it merged, was the largest provider of financial news and information on Earth. The merger led to massive job cuts across the now combined businesses, with leadership particularly Devin bragging about more than £500 million worth of savings within the first 3 years after the merger. Now, the reality of this was pretty brutal. The merger not only cost a lot of people their jobs, but it caused a collapse in profitability and influence for Thomson Reuters. It had been easily the largest company in the space at the time of the merger, if you combine the readership of both platforms. But once they were merged, the quality dropped and Bloomberg closed the gap behind them. There were several years of botched product launches while Wenig was, helping to run the company, which proved that the new team running Thomson Reuters didn't know what they were doing. This summary from an article in The Guardian gives you an idea of how disastrous this merger proved to be. In 2007, Thomson Reuters spoke for more than 36% of the market against 25% for Bloomberg. But according to its experts, Bloomberg will have nearly caught up in 2011 with a 30.8 market share against 31.4 for Thomson Reuters. Something has gone horribly wrong. At the very least, the task of melding these two companies together has been far more complex than originally envisaged. A less kind interpretation is that management, which has cut many hundreds of jobs, has taken its eye off the ball, losing hapless investors billions along the way. So you could say the evidence would suggest that Devin Wenig is not a business genius, right? Based on his primary accomplishment, the merger of Thomson Reuters up to this point, a disaster for the company's influence and for its workers, but it makes a lot of money for shareholders. And that's really all that matters. So in 2011, some of those same people make Devin Wenig he gets hired at eBay initially as the president of their global marketplace business, right? He is initially successful here. One of the things that Devin recognizes early is that mobile commerce is going to be the future for eBay, like sales to users shopping through their smartphones. And he reorganizes the company around that, which is a very successful move. In 2015, he becomes the CEO of the company. And within a couple of years at the job, the Steiners, who are covering eBay as Winnig takes over its CEO, notices that his pay compensation keeps rising at a rapid rate, particularly during a time when eBay itself is having trouble, when they're dealing with increased competition from companies like Amazon, and when workers are not seeing their compensation rise. So from 2015 to 2018, Devin goes from $14.5 million a year to $17.6 million a year. This is out of line with the salary increases enjoyed by eBay employees during the same period, as Ina Steiner wrote on April 8th, 2018. Quote, for the first time, eBay released a new statistic called the CEO pay ratio, required now of public companies. eBay reported the ratio of the total annual compensation of Mr. Winnig to the median annual total compensation of all employees is estimated to be 143 to 1. Now, here's the thing, Jason. That's actually not bad. If we're looking like overall in US like publicly traded companies, on average, CEOs earn 399 times as much as the median worker. So you could say eBay's not doing terribly, right? And Ina's article doesn't portray this as like a polemic. She's really just kind of focusing on the facts that like, yeah, this is how much Winnig is making. This is how it compares to the rate of salary increases normal employees have gotten, and this is how much it compares to the amount of money that normal employees are getting. You would
and
not,
also to any normal person, it kind of really does look like he failed his way up into that position.
Because he did.
but this is because you have to understand what is considered success in that world. So like taking over a media company and tanking the quality, but it's like, well, yeah, you tanked the quality by 80%, but you cut expenses by 90%. So if you think about it,
it's a win. Yeah. And that's how a guy like Devin thinks about things. And, you know, she's not coming at this with the kind of ideological lens that like, I might if I were getting, on more of a rant about Devin. She really is just reporting the facts. But Winnig comes across like he gets sent from underlings various articles she's putting out. It's known in eBay's C-suite that you have to pay attention to the Steiners and their articles because your investors do. And everything she writes about his compensation makes him angry. Particularly, she ends one article with this line. eBay employees, feel free to chime in on whether or not you received a pay hike of 10 to 14% this year and what you think of your salary compared to the median salary of your colleagues. And again, I would say that that's like a responsible, very fair way to phrase that as a journalist. This is not like someone at like some far left rag, right? But
look,
Devin is threatened by this.
Either one of us could post online a photo of our lunch. Mm-hmm. And within, say, 10 replies, I will be told to kill myself. You will be accused of being a CIA plant.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Or a terrorist.
And that you need to kill yourself.
Yeah.
This is what the first thing that struck me, because when I saw what they did and then they explained what triggered the insane reaction we're about to get to, and it's so mild.
It's really, so really mild. Because
these people are not like yellow journalism. They're not muckrakers. It's just, it's the mildest criticism. You can tell how polite these people are.
Yeah. I'm sure Ina is tips 25% at all times and is unfailingly polite to everyone she encounters in the real world.
Well, I'm saying specifically as a content creator, you can tell that that's not where she gets her traffic. The traffic is not from being an over the top trashing people.
Not at all.
It's not the way all political commentary has the tone now of just constantly calling people pedophiles or whatever. Mm-hmm. I guess that's my point. It's not like they took on somebody who was just an assassin, just constantly tearing them down. No. It was just somebody who did, it sounds like, to get that size of an audience and to do stuff that's actually substantive and mature, that's amazing. And when you read that criticism, it's like, wow, that's the stuff that this guy considers crossing the line. With what kid gloves must she have always been handling them with?
Yeah, that's exactly the point. And I do want to put a pin in that accusing people of being pedophiles thing, Jason, because when we come back from the ad break, you and I are going to accuse a celebrity of being a pedophile.
Looking for your next go-to smoke shop? Stop scrolling. I've got you. Headshop.com is the #1 online smoke shop, already trusted by over 100,000 happy smokers, just like you. They've got it all. Dab rigs, vaporizers, glass bongs, smoking pipes, even THCA flower, all in one place. Need a new daily driver? Grab a smooth glass bong or a classic smoking pipe. More of a concentrate fan? Their dab rigs, e-rigs, and wax accessories are designed for smoother, harder hitting sessions. And yes, they've even got legal THC flower. Best part? Every order ships fast and discreet, which is why thousands of smokers keep coming back. So don't waste time hopping between shops. Shop the best in dab rigs, vaporizers, glass bongs, smoking pipes, and THCA flower right now at headshop.com, the #1 online smoke shop. Headshop.com has what you need. Check it out today. Oh, and because you're listening right now, you get 10% off your next order when you use the coupon code HSHOP at checkout. Go to headshop.com now and smoke smarter.
Almost 30 years together, 4 kids, and some of reality TV's most unforgettable moments, we know a thing or two about living life out loud. We're taking you behind the scenes in our new podcast, Between Us, with me, Heather Dubrow.
And me, Terry Dubrow. Between Us isn't about perfect lighting or curated Instagram grids.
It's the unfiltered, behind closed doors conversations you wish you could eavesdrop on. Equal parts smart, funny, and a little bit scandalous.
Every week, Heather will bring you an unapologetic take on the headlines, the trends, and the cultural moments everyone's texting about.
And Terry will deliver insider beauty, health, and wellness insights you won't find on TikTok.
Together, we'll tell the stories, spill the secrets, and share the hacks that keep life, marriage, and everything in between feeling fresh and fun.
We may live in a gated community, but there's zero gatekeeping here.
And plenty of did they just say that moments?
Listen to Between Us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's place, black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they was dressed up in their uniform.
The KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place. A story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We're back. Jason, legal got back to me. We're going to have to cut the segment that we had planned. So can rest easy tonight. The allegations will not be going out in public. But one of these days, Jason, one of these days, we'll get the truth out to the people. So back to Ina and our friend Devin Winnig, CEO of eBay. Now, Ina had good reason to be politely critical of Winnig. His exorbitant raises for himself and the rest of his friends in the C-suite of eBay had coincided with a rash of outlandishly wasteful expenses, best exemplified by his 2016 construction of the Main Street building on the eBay campus. This building was envisioned as the company's front door, and at the grand opening, Winnig explained himself by saying, "Buildings are symbols of your culture and of your brand." And it's like, it looks like any other really nice Silicon Valley office, which it isn't a weird expense when the companies are like doing great. But when you're in a cash crunch, it's going to get like criticized that like, well, you spent how many millions of dollars on this building that isn't necessary for work. It just kind of makes you look nice to 0% of the people who are going to be spending money on your platform because they are not invited to the Main Street building, right?
Especially when you know that down further in the lower levels of the organization, because we have both worked for companies that, you know, you got people who are reading memos going around about now, some of you are plugging in your phones in the outlets. That electricity is not free. You are not allowed to use those outlets for personal devices. That's up to 18 cents of electricity per month you could be using there. That you've got people that are forced to watch every little tiny penny. Yeah. And, you know, if they work 1 hour of overtime that their boss deemed was inappropriate, that they get yelled at. So this is why it's like, no, up at the top, they don't have to watch that stuff at all. They can just decide, you know what, I want a building that will impress visitors.
Yeah. And it's the kind of thing where like, this is not just like, some workers at the bottom or even just people like Ina criticizing eBay of like, wow, this is a really unnecessary expense. This is the conclusion reached in January of 2019 by Elliott Management after they pumped $1.4 billion into eBay for a 4% stake in the company. Now, Elliott Management is one of the they have a very milquetoast name. Like they're not nearly as well known because they don't have as sinister a name as like BlackRock. But this is one of like the most bloodthirsty money companies out in the United States right now, right? They are a ruthless Wall Street investment firm. They actually just put out a really interesting article about like how they think the AI industry is massively overvalued. That I think is one of the more interesting things that's been written from like that side of the ledger. But like they are not people, unlike a lot of like Silicon Valley, which runs on irrational exuberance and like think of how profitable this is all going to be. These guys are like bloodless vampires, and they purely exist to maximize the profit that they can get for their investment. And they have no interest in like the egos of a guy like Devin Winnick, right? So they took one look at eBay's balance books after they pump $1.4 billion into the company, and they conclude this is one of the most inefficient and chaotic executive teams that we've ever seen, and the company is burning through a huge amount of cash on shit that nobody needs. And now that we've put all this money into the company, we are going to demand serious changes, right? And Elliott has the kind of juice that means everyone at the company starts sweating. This is actually potentially a threat even to Winnick's job, right? Like this is not, you can't ignore the people who are able to put $1.4 billion into your company, right? Maybe if you're Apple, you can, because that's pennies to them, but eBay cannot afford to ignore that, right? Now, when you are in a company like this and a bunch of people with a shitload of money come in and say, we're going to make some serious changes. If you and I have both been in that situation with various corporate overlords, the natural impulse is, well, I need to put my head the fuck down, right? I don't want to draw any attention to myself unless it's like for doing something good. And this is kind of what Winnick wanted to do, but he had a problem. And that problem is the Steiners, because their boring industry publication is read by the folks at Elliott, right? Who are using it in part to try and determine whether or not the people running eBay are wasting more of their money. So this kind of irritation he'd had with the Steiners reporting on his salary grows into an obsession as he gets more and more worried that his control of the company is at risk now. In April of 2019, then, when Ina wrote another article about the fact that Devin was very much overpaid, he gets angry. Now, he has hired a PR company at that point to help manage the situation, right? And in general, the bad PR that eBay is getting at this time. And the PR company, because they're competent professionals, are like, ignore this. Don't get obsessed with these elderly people and their blog. There's no response you can make to them that will not blow up in your face. Just let this by and try to run the company more efficiently, right? Which is like,
take a pay cut. Maybe
take a pay cut.
If you think that's a vulnerability in the organization, if you think you are overpaid, if you think their criticism is true, then take a pay cut. Is that one of the options?
Just don't take a raise this year, probably. You know, like you could get away with that, maybe. Devin for a while goes with their recommendation. But whenever he would get angry, he would fume about the Steiners to his fellow executives. And when he would fume to his fellow executives, all of the subordinates below him in the C-suite, they would send his emails on down the line to other people at the company, particularly to people in eBay's like security division, right? And inevitably, all of his complaints wound up at the office of his top security director, a man named Jim Baugh, like B-A-U-G-H. Or Bog? We'll go with Bog. So in April of 2019, Bog had his analysts gather information and prepared an anonymous handwritten note to be sent to Ina Steiner. He was not, we don't know if he was ordered to do this, but he has his people get a bunch of info on her, and he puts together a handwritten note threatening her physical person and threatening to destroy her reputation. And the goal stated in like the emails around this handwritten document was that they were making it to get her to, quote, stop publishing articles critical of eBay. Now, at this point, I don't know entirely where they don't get the go ahead from the C-suite, right? I don't know if Devin actually makes a call here or if it's someone below him, but someone still has a lid on their worst impulses at this point, April of 2019. But Bog is just kind of getting started here, right? The fact that his send a crazy letter to these people plan gets kind of killed does not kill his desire for vengeance against these bloggers. Now, I want to give you some context on Jim Bog, because understanding him is very critical both to understanding the kind of people who wind up in these corporate intelligence roles and to understanding all of the insane shit that comes next. Bog, we don't have a huge amount of detail in his early life or whatever, but he worked for the CIA. He was at some point an operative at the CIA, right? From what I can tell, I think he worked there for a decent amount of time. I'm not sure if it was a full career, but it was a matter of multiple years. And then after he leaves the CIA, he starts a security firm that becomes very popular with Silicon Valley companies. He contracts to Apple, to Amazon. He works security for the Oscars one year. Probably his biggest role is he provides a protection detail to Joe Biden at the 2016 Oscars. So that's a little odd, but there you go. Maybe they should, he dropped out of the campaign. That would have been a great thing for Trump to hit him on, though, if only.
Did this guy give his security firm a cool name like Black
It's like Jim Baugh Consulting or something like that. No, nothing cool at all. Yeah. At least I'll say this for the Black Cube people, that's a cool name for a spy company. Like, it sounds evil. As does like Palantir sounds evil, but Joe Bog is not a particularly creative man. So it's a little hard for me to tell the degree to which Bog was still tied into the U.S. intelligence establishment during the period of time that he's working at Silicon Valley. To underlings at eBay, he would periodically claim that his wife was still employed by the CIA. I think there's a good chance he was lying. He also would claim in public, often while drinking, that he was still a part-time employee of the CIA in his spare time. I found an article in Puck News about claims made in the court case that results from all of this. Quote, Bog detailed how, after leaving the CIA, he was re-enlisted to provide private sector colleagues, even a CEO, he boasted, to recruit private sector colleagues, even a CEO, he boasted, to spy on foreign leaders and report back on important international meetings. I felt honored to be trusted with such sensitive information and to be able to provide security assistance to our government. So, and this is stuff that he says in court when he's trying to get his sentence mitigated. I continued to work after entering private security for the federal government, recruiting like business people, including the CEO of one company, to spy on foreign leaders and report back on their meetings for the federal government. I think this is the kind of thing that happens a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, if he was doing that, that's not the weirdest thing we've heard whatsoever. That is the kind of thing in terms of like getting hired under the table or whatever to continue to collect intelligence or whatever. Like,
yeah,
it's a very plausible lie. If it's a lie, it's very plausible.
Yeah, and it makes total sense. If you're the CIA, what would you rather do? Spend a shitload of money and potentially risk lives of your operatives like wiretapping a guy? Or when the CEO of tech company X goes to meet with Vladimir Putin, talk to him afterwards, right? Yeah. Like one of those is much easier than the other.
Yeah, they're there anyway, yeah.
And it's not all that hard to rope. Like if you're a guy like Bog, you go to this like, hey, You've got this kind of boring corporate job. Do you want to be a spy for a little bit, right? The CIA has a job for you, and all you have to do is the job you were going to do, right? Like, obviously, you get a lot of guys who are interested in doing shit like this, if only to make their lives a little less boring.
Now, the first and most important requirement is that you not get drunk and tell everyone that you're doing this.
Right. Yeah. Which Boggs seems to be doing. He drinks a lot and he tells people a lot about his side work for the CIA and his wife's work for the CIA. Now, we don't know much about the specifics here, like really how far this went, but we do know that he's telling the truth about a lot of it, because after he started talking about this stuff in court, the Justice Department had his letter to the court sealed, claiming it contained classified national security secrets. We only know all of the stuff that was in the letter because the court monitoring services forgot to redact it when they put it up online. And so the guys at Puck News were able to get unredacted versions of what is now a sealed court letter. So again, the security state's got a lot of holes in it still.
Yeah.
Yeah. But fun story. So that is enough about kind of his backstory here. What is interesting to me about Jim is that he definitely has the CIA connection. He definitely has a legit background as a spy and a professional career working, or at least if not as a spy, working in some degree as an intelligence operative, right? And he is still, even though he has this real experience, someone whose entire conception of the world, and specifically how intelligence works, seems to be based on stereotypes from Hollywood movies. And I'm going to read now a quote from the New York Times describing how he would, after he gets hired at eBay to run this special elite security analytics team, how he would talk to his team of analysts about threats to eBay. Mr. Bogg would bring the analysts into a conference room and show the scene from American Gangster, where Denzel Washington coolly executes a man in front of a crowd to make a point, or a clip from The Wolf of Wall Street, where the feds are investigating shady deeds, but none of the perpetrators can recall a thing, or the bit from Meet the Fockers about a retired CIA agent's circle of trust. That one came up frequently. No one is supposed to know about this, Mr. Bogg would tell the analysts about some piece of office gossip. We'll keep it in the circle of trust. So
I guess, okay, but right away, here's where I'm again getting confused, because this blogger, they were not a threat to the company. They were a threat to that CEO.
Yep.
That they thought was wasting money, both in terms of taking a salary, in terms of spending money recklessly. So this is where I didn't get why this guy, this goon, took such offense at what these bloggers were doing if he was not ordered to by the CEO, because they're going to make the story that, like,
yeah,
all the CEO did was vaguely say, well, I don't like this, and that he went off on his own. But it's this is also the part that I could never figure out what his motivation was.
Jason, if you'll forgive me, I'd like to talk about the Nazis again here, because I think this is an illustrative point. Not because these people are Nazis, they're not, but because it's illustrative as to how stuff like this can actually, like stuff like this filters down and up without necessarily commands being given. There was this understanding in the Third Reich that people who worked at various levels of the government should all be working towards the Führer, right? Which meant that rather than just waiting to get explicit instructions while you were doing something like, helping to set up the architecture of genocide or of state repression in the Gestapo, you should try to figure out what Hitler wanted and provide it for him before he asked, right? And so a lot of the time we don't have there's not a lot of documentation about Hitler ordering specific crimes against humanity. What you do have is him having dinner with a bunch of his high-level adjutants and aides and officials and talking vaguely about things he would like to see happen. And then they go to their underlings and say, like, hey, these are the kind of things Hitler wants. And then it keeps kind of filtering down as people sort of try to figure out what the actual policy implications about these vague, grandiose statements ought to be. And that is not just how the Nazis work, that's how large organizations that are heavily based around the personality of a leader at the top and pleasing that person work. And I get the feeling Devin Winnig, he is temperamental. He is someone we have some evidence has a lot of mood swings. I think a lot of people at the company have an understanding that their ability to get hired elsewhere, their ability to stay at eBay is dependent upon Devin being happy with them. And when Devin will go on rages about these people, that makes it into a priority for the lower people to find a way to deal with them, even if Devin isn't necessarily ordering them to break the law. This kind of desperation to, I want to kind of proactively please the boss, is how a lot of this stuff works, right? And I do think that's kind of the broad psychological thing going on here.
And if I can make another extremely inappropriate comparison, to this day, it's never totally clear to me if, like with the Manson family murders,
right,
if Charles Manson actually ordered that done, or if he was just extremely high, like, why, all you gotta do, you gotta go and kill them all, just paint the walls with their blood, da, da, da. And if he was just talking, and then they took it as an order because, you know, like to this day, they talk about Manson as this criminal mastermind and he manipulated everybody else around him. It's like, no, I think they were all just kind of dumb and high and they didn't know, you know, he was just ranting the way he does. You've seen him in interviews. And so they just went and did it. And maybe he himself didn't know if he wanted it done because that's kind of the way people work. And he, you know,
a lot of the time. And I'm not saying, by the way, just to be clear, I'm not saying that like Hitler was not on board with the crimes committed by the regime, but he was not a nuts and bolts guy and he didn't need to be. And oftentimes that's not how things work. You have, you know, the person at the top expressing these kind of like rage-filled, grandiose goals, and he has put people in place below him who he knows will do something. He doesn't need to know the specifics.
An extremely important point, and I do want to stop and focus on this because this happens all over the place. You create a culture, but it is in many cases intentionally set up so that if there is backlash or you get caught doing something, that you can say, well, there was no order telling them to do this.
Yeah.
And so trying to pin it on you with these nebulous terms of, well, but you rewarded similar behavior, or you made it clear you weren't going to punish such behavior or whatever, that you created a culture, you hired the type of people that would do this kind of thing. It's hard. And in this criminal case, I think it's going to turn out to be true. Mm-hmm. It's hard to pin it on the guy at the top that kind of set the stage for it to happen.
Right.
And the people who really know what they're doing, they make sure that it's run this way.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is not just eBay, but eBay is a particularly extreme example. Now, under Bog, as he's basically running this security division within the company, eBay develops a pretty paranoid set of internal security policies. I should note, you know, because we're talking about the most irrational example of this, there's a good reason for some degree of paranoia. The year before all of this happens, everything starts to happen 2019 with the Steiners. There's a mass shooting at YouTube's headquarters in San Bruno, California. The shooter in this case was Nassim Najafi Agdam, who's a vegan activist YouTuber who believed the company had filtered her channel to keep her stuff from getting viewed. She wounded 3 people before killing herself. And, you know, it's kind of hard for me to see eBay attracting exactly that kind of thing, but also it's not hard for me to imagine someone who is not well convincing themselves that eBay has destroyed their business for some reason. And like, it's not a non-factor, right? So there's this obsession Bog has with like the physical security of the company that lends to this general air of paranoia. And he would tell his colleagues in the analytics department, because they're looking into people who are critical of eBay online, right? And the reasonable end of that is we need to, you know, if some people are saying on Twitter, I want to like shoot up an eBay campus or something, we need to know about that because that actually could happen, right? But that's not the only people that they're going after. And this kind of kernel, the justification for what they're doing is where a lot of the madness comes from. And Bog kind of hypes himself up after the shooting on the importance of his role. He would tell his employees, quote, "We need to be ready. We're the only ones who can prevent this from happening." Bog would hold regular mass shooter drills, and as always, he would play clips from action movies and spy thrillers to inform and motivate his staff on how to deal with the shooting. When he wasn't psyching them up about this stuff, he was frightening them with knives. This is one of my favorite stories from this guy. At one point, he's like walking around, there's a barbecue grill on the eBay campus, and like someone leaves a knife at the grill and he freaks out about it. He gets the whole team around him and he's like waving the knife around, ranting about how like if a deranged person found this, they could have used this to hurt somebody. And then he takes it into the security office and he stabs a chair and he makes them leave the chair with the knife in it there as a warning to everybody about how much more paranoid they need to be. So you can tell this is a man who's got like a good sense of priorities. He's responding rationally to the world before we get into this shit with the Steiners.
I could speak for the next 4.5 hours on this subject, but instead I'm going to try to condense it down to a few sentences. There is a type of hyper-performative masculinity that is all about being scared all the time.
Yes.
And these are the guys that have a pump shotgun like under their bed and a little quick release latch thing. Cause like, well, if somebody breaks in, I'll roll out of my bed, grab this, take out the guy at the window, shoot the guy at the door, roll into the hallway. And they spin and they think of it as being tough guy, but they're scared. They're scared to death. They go to the zoo with, a gun on their ankles. Like, watch, there's a mass shooting at the zoo, or what if a bunch of the animals get out and it's up to me to shoot them? It's like they're living in fear and then portraying that as masculinity, tough guy stuff, when it's actually the opposite. It's just constantly being overly afraid of everything all the time.
Yeah. We have a lot of problems with this exact kind of guy, right? And Bog is kind of he's an example of how it works at like the top of sort of a corporate food chain when this guy gets into security. And when I kind of try to psychoanalyze him, again, we don't, because he was a CIA agent, we don't get a lot of specifics of his career, but I think that he probably has, one of the two Watergate guys, the dude who was played by Woody Harrelson in one of the recent shows, I'm spacing on his name right now, was a former CIA man, right? Who had been a part of some of like the regime change shit in Central America, but not doing like exciting murdering people or handing over guns, mostly like making sure payments went where they needed to go and handling paperwork. So he is part of these sketchy, scary, like very movie-worthy plots, but in a really boring way. And then when he leaves, he's kind of insecure about the fact that he doesn't actually know how to do anything cool. And that's where a lot of the dumb shit with the Watergate break-ins come in, is like, this guy is convinced, well, I was at the CIA doing shady shit. I should be able to do something like this, even though he doesn't actually know how to do anything but file paperwork.
Yeah, they don't actually know how this stuff is done by the people that are actually good at doing the dirty tricks.
Right. Yeah, and that is the feeling that I get with Bog. So Bog's team consists of about a half a dozen analysts, which when he gets hired are I think mostly men. But by May of 2018, after he's been there, I think a year or two, he had fired and hired people until the entire team was very young women. This is the kind of environment where no one feels safe asking him about this, but he would explain it to them anyway by playing a video of Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg giving a speech on how there aren't enough female leaders. And I'm going to quote from the New York Times again. Miss Sandberg did not say these women should all be young and blonde. Charlie's Angels and Jim's Angels were their nicknames in the executive suite. But Miss Z, which is one of his young employees, wasn't about to point that out. Women got fired too, and afterward the survivors would whisper about why. One departed analyst had been reprimanded for not smiling in front of executives. Another was let go because she sang to keep herself awake during the night shift. A third because she chewed on her pen. So, just to give you a picture of this guy, he makes all of his employees young and blonde. Everyone at the C-suite is aware of this. They make Charlie's Angels jokes about it, and then he'll fire them if they don't smile enough or, aren't acting cute enough for his behavior. Again, very, a guy we're all well familiar with. To take the creep factor up a notch, Bog and his top assistant, Stephanie Pop, ordered the rest of the analyst team to refer to them as mom and dad, repeatedly telling them, "We're a family," which it just sounds like a nightmare working for this team. So with his Charlie's Angels-style HR violation of a team in place, Boggs started watching the Steiner's website like a hawk as, in May of 2019, the CEO began sending more and more messages about their content. That month, May, Ina published an article revealing that Devin Winnig had directed corporate funds to build what she described as a, quote, lavish New York City pub-style lounge on their campus. This was, in fact, a scale replica of a New York City bar, Walker's West, built on the eBay campus entirely for eBay employees. I don't know why this particular bar is important. I think it's a popular bar. I think it's just a bar Winnig thought was cool. So he spent shareholder money building a perfect replica. And it opened at 3 p.m. every day on the eBay campus. So again, the fact that there's a bar on campus and everyone is drinking is not a non-factor in some of the decisions that are going to be made here. Ina's article on the construction of this pub has the same slightly critical but professional tone as her other work. Quote, sure seems like an unnecessary expense for a company watching its market share get eaten up by Amazon and being warned about overspending by a major investor. This is what kind of infuriates people at eBay's executive level. Bogg gets the article and he's scared that someone at Elliott's going to read it, and so he forwards a link to the CEO, who forwards it to an underling executive who sends it to a PR consultant and complains, I'm no longer just accepting ignore as a broader strategy and want to fight back. Looking forward to talking ASAP to get your assessment of how to do that most effectively. And this excerpt from the subsequent court filing describes what happens next. Thereafter, eBay communications employees sent information to the consultant about the Steiners, including their buying-selling history on eBay and the perspective of eBay employees who knew them. On or about May 31st, 2019, Executive 2 and Executive 3 exchanged messages regarding Ina Steiner and e-commerce bytes. In relevant part, Executive 2 described an e-commerce bytes article discussing Executive 1, that's the CEO's, presentation to shareholders during eBay's 2019 annual meetings as shockingly reasonable. Executive 3 referred to Ina Steiner as a cow. Executive 2 responded, her day is coming. Executive 3 stated, I can't wait. Jim Baugh came to me with some thoughts and I told him to stand down and leave it alone. Executive 2 responded, you are being too kind. Tell him to be my advisor on this issue. Sometimes you just need to make an example out of someone. We are too nice. She needs to be crushed. So I want to go over the escalation here. Right? These two executives, they get the message from the CEO and then they start talking about Steiner and what they need to do about her. And executive number 2 is like, well, her presentation on the CEO's shareholder meeting was really reasonable. And then the other guy is like, yeah, but she's a cow. And then they start making these increasingly movie-like threats. Her day is coming. We'll make an example out of her. She needs to be crushed. The escalation from this is a pretty reasonable piece of reporting from we need to destroy this human being happens in the space of a couple of text messages, which I find really interesting.
And I feel like we've left a lot of the listeners behind because there's such a disconnect. The problem, again, the fear that these investors were going to see this article. The problem is not the article. The problem is that you built that goddamn bar.
Why did you spend all that money on a bar? Yeah.
It's like, well, this is the last straw that she told everyone about the bar we built. It's like, no, back up. You went one step too far. Your problem didn't start with a blogger noticing you built a replica of a New York bar for millions of dollars. It's that you did that at all. Because after all, if she had made that up, if that was fake, well, then it's easy. You can just go out and disprove it and say, hey, this is a lie. This is libelous. It's the fact that what she was saying is true that made it so damaging. So now focus on why is it that what she said was true? That was your own actions.
And she finds out about this because the contractor eBay hires puts a page up on their website, with pictures of the construction and how much it cost and everything. Because they, that's how the contractor gets additional business. And Ina just finds it Googling around oh, it seems like they spent a lot of money on this fucking thing. The absolute the number one refusal to see that, like, well, it's your own action that's getting you the bad attention. And the fact that, like, and you didn't even take any efforts to stop someone from finding this out. You know, you could have had them do an NDA, right? You didn't have to let them publish an article about it on their website. Did you not think anyone would notice? Anyway. Bog, after this point, gets the go-ahead to actually begin offensive actions against the Steiners. And on June 6th, he tasks his team with tracking all of Ina's articles and social media posts concerning eBay. On June 7th, he sends a contractor, a retired police captain named Gilbert, to surveil the Steiners' home in the Boston area. The day after this, Bog himself called the Steiners' home in the middle of the night and hung up as soon as they answered. The harassment campaign had begun, and it is amusing to me that apparently the CIA training that this guy had told him, like, start by trolling them on social media, then you call them and you hang up. I guess this might be why we lost Cuba. Unfortunately, as with Cuba, things are going to escalate pretty rapidly from here, and we're going to cover that and more, Jason, on Thursday's episode. But right now, we're going to cover your books that people can buy, or in one case, pre-order right now.
Yes, the new book is called I'm Starting to Worry About This Black Box of Doom. Yeah, it's up for pre-order. It is out on September 24th. If you are hearing this after that date, it's already out. Mm-hmm. If it's not, then that means it got pulled off shelves and I'm probably in jail or something, or I got canceled somehow. There's probably an equally interesting story in that. Otherwise, yeah, it's available in every format, including audio, ebook, hardcover. I do not read the audiobook. I'm not an audiobook narrator. People keep asking me that. That would be a disaster. They hired a professional.
Yeah, I would love it if the same thing happened to you that happened to what's his name? Tom Clancy that one time where he like accidentally described a nuclear submarine so accurately that the government had to sit down with him. Anyway, read Jason's books before he is arrested for accurately describing aspects of our nuclear defense triad. And listen to the remaining podcasts on this network before we get taken out for, I don't know. I don't have a joke ready. Whatever. I'm tired. Go to hell. I love you.
Behind the Bastards is a production of Cool Zone Media. For more from Cool Zone Media, visit our website, coolzonemedia.com, or check us out on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Looking for your next go-to smoke shop? Stop scrolling. I've got you. Headshop.com is the #1 online smoke shop, already trusted by over 100,000 happy smokers, just like you. They've got it all. Dab rigs, vaporizers, glass bongs, smoking pipes, even THCA flower, all in one place. Need a new daily driver? Grab a smooth glass bong or a classic smoking pipe. More of a concentrate fan? Their dab rigs, e-rigs, and wax accessories are designed for smoother, harder hitting sessions. And yes, they've even got legal THC flower. Best part? Every order ships fast and discreet, which is why thousands of smokers keep coming back. So don't waste time hopping between shops. Shop the best in dab rigs, vaporizers, glass bongs, smoking pipes, and THCA flower right now at headshop.com, the #1 online smoke shop. Headshop.com has what you need. Check it out today. Oh, and because you're listening right now, you get 10% off your next order when you use the coupon code HSHOP at checkout. Go to headshop.com now and smoke smarter.
When segregation was a law, one mysterious black club owner, Charlie Fitzgerald, had his own rules.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
It was like stepping in another world.
Was he a businessman, a criminal, a hero?
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
Charlie's Place, from Atlas Obscura and Visit Myrtle Beach. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, it's me, Anna Sinfield, the host of The Girlfriends. I'm back with more one-off interviews with some truly kick-ass women on The Girlfriends Spotlight.
I'm going to climb this. Is badness hereditary? Let's see how we can stop killing.
I'm not too intimidated by her.
What are you talking about? Listen to The Girlfriend Spotlight on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.